Yeah.
Hello, everybody. My name is Sarah. I work at the Levittown Public Library, and we are here today to ask the experts. So we have a couple of experts here who are going to help us answer some very important questions. Our first expert is Karen Azamone. Karen's company, Growing Through Coaching, supports parents who are working through the many situations that parenthood brings. She believes that by fostering a connection, building trust, and increasing awareness and finding acceptance, parents can develop a stable, loving relationship with their children that prepares them to be thoughtful, caring adults. She has degrees in psychology and sociology and is a graduate of Coach U, a certified positive discipline parent educator, certified in parenting with insight, and a mom of 2 teenagers that still talk to her. Karen's passion is to support parents as they look to develop their children while continuing to grow themselves. Our next person is Carol Grima, I apologize. She is a school administrator with an extensive background in special education and applied behavior analysis. She received her dual master's degree in general education and special education with a concentration in autism from LIU CW Post and an advanced certificate in behavior analysis from Hofstra University. She's dedicated to the education and well-being of all students and believes creating a home-school connection is essential when transitioning back to a traditional school setting. We also have Robin Littman, who is a registered dietitian who teaches beach yoga classes 4 to 5 times a week and has 3 children and has been working as a dietitian for 25 years. Then we have Alyssa Rotolo, who is a speech language pathologist with over 20 years of experience, who specializes in speech, language, play, oral motor, and feeding therapy with children birth to school age. Elisa received a master's degree in speech language pathology from Brooklyn College and worked at the McCartan School and McCartan Center, where she was the speech language supervisor at the Children's Academy. She is now a successful private practice on Long Island. So thank you guys all for joining us today. We really appreciate it. We have a couple of questions that we're going to ask you. Feel free to chime in with whatever you guys feel is appropriate. And if multiple people want to answer, that's great too. The first question is really about, probably going to be more for Robin, which is about if you have any suggestions for healthy lunches that parents can provide, because a lot of them are being asked to only do brown bag lunches, which means no ice packs, no nothing. And also a lot of people can't do peanut butter. So if you had any suggestions that people would be able to use.
Yes, well, I also struggle with this question because my youngest is 13 and quite picky, and her lunch consists of interesting choices. But I always try to encourage her to fill up at lunch with the high fiber carbohydrates and also protein in order to, at that meal, really give them the energy for the rest of the day for school and also a little brain food. So she's not the traditional sandwich eater. I'm going to speak from myself. And so I struggle if I want to give her a sandwich. She doesn't necessarily eat a sandwich like a traditional sandwich and a whole wheat bread with turkey. So we do some interesting combinations. She will eat edamame for protein. So that's a good choice if your children like something like that. And lots of children nowadays do. Also, without having the advantage of using peanut butter, because so many children are allergic, although the recommendations for that has totally changed. But in school, they definitely do not always allow them to have the peanut butter. I would always encourage, if they are not into eating the lunch meats, which are often filled with sodium, perhaps something just like a lower fat type of cheese to give them the protein with some lettuce, tomato on the whole wheat bread. There's a very good bread called Dave's Killer Bread, actually, which is a weird name, but it has protein in it and fiber, and it's a real good complete protein for them to get that nutrition in at that lunch meal. Often children like to have soup at lunch, so that's not a bad option. I often say bringing fruit, definitely a fresh fruit, wash it ahead of time, wrap it in some styrofoam now with all the precautions we're going through. Fill up on water at lunch, Hummus is a good idea too. Some children like chips and hummus, like a nice whole wheat cracker with hummus. So don't always think the traditional sandwiches, because that doesn't always work. Also, hard-boiled eggs. My kids love hard-boiled eggs, and they bring hard-boiled eggs to school too. So trying to think of what else we do. String cheese, it's not a bad option. What else? Carrots. Carrots with hummus is not a bad idea. So along the lines of thinking of the nutrients, just to summarize it a little bit, high fiber carbohydrates, lots of protein, and the fat will come in with the protein choice. So you want to make sure that it's a high satiety meal there. Avocado too, if your children like avocado, that's a good choice. Anyone else have any suggestions on picky eaters of what they give their children?
We're not picky.
You're lucky. Yeah, there's always that crew of the kids that aren't picky. But yogurt, but then yogurts don't always stay so cold in the lunch. So that's it's going to be a challenge, but think wholesome, think whole grain, think whole foods, and fresh fruits is always good. So the healthier we can be during this time, the better. I work in healthcare, and those that come sick or have been sick recover quicker and more effectively when they have a real good nutritional base. So going back to basics with that. Good carbs, healthy protein, and fat. While you don't want to overdo the fat, it is important to have every day in order to fill you up. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
Okay, so our next question is, for the children who are heading back to school, what suggestions would you make from your professional point of view of how best to help them transition from homeschooling to being back in a classroom setting that's now so different from what they left?
So I'm comfortable taking that question. I think something that parents and caregivers need to be very aware of is what they're saying, the children are listening to. So if they're having an anxious or nervous viewpoint and they're expressing this and they're very vocal about this, the children are going to certainly pick up on it. So whatever the parents' feelings are, whatever their reservations are, if their choice is to send their child back to school, they need to let their children know the rules. The rules are: you wash your hands before you eat, you wash your hands after you eat, you follow the teacher's directions, you wear your mask, but you're going to be okay. I think it's very important to be careful. A lot of children will say, I have a bellyache, I have a headache, and we know that they're just trying to escape going to school. And with this, we have to be very careful. And we certainly don't want to ignore these quests to maybe skip a day of school, but we don't want to feed into them as well. So as parents, we have to, make sure you have that working thermometer. Make sure you're monitoring if do they feel a little bit warm? What is their normal temperature, right? So is their normal temperature 98.6, or is your child more of a 99.2 on their average? But most importantly, if we want to really send the child to school with, strong emotional foundation, we have to present to them how they should be acting, right? We need to let them know that they're safe. We're going to take care of this. And if at any time we feel that this is unsafe, that we are going to keep them home again. And I guess that's what's most important is, you're going to get what you give. So if you give anxiety, you're going to get a child who's anxious.
Thank you.
I would just like to add, I love what Carol said, and I would just like to add, just really be aware of what your child's going through. These are really strange times for the kids. They're getting affected much more than we ever imagined. Maybe when they finished school last year, it was a couple of hours a day in front of a computer, and now they're going into full schedules, changing classrooms, just huge change from how they left last year. So just really be aware of what their emotions are, how they're feeling about things, listen to them, don't push them off, really hear them, as Carol said, so that you can model the behavior that you want them to see and make sure they're feeling connected when they're going to be separated, going to school, and maybe being frightful of it. And let them know what your expectations are of them and how you're going to handle it if you're feeling that it's not, that they're not safe, that you're always going to have their best interests at heart.
Thank you.
I'd like to add one more thing. As a speech pathologist, I work with a lot of children with special needs. And for the children with special needs, it might not be easy for them to actually grasp and understand. I do a lot of social stories, and that's basically a picture book that, I have a picture of a child wearing a mask, let's say in front of the school, and it will say, when we go to school, we wear a mask. And then I'll have a picture of a child being, in, like, let's say on a school bus, and when you're on a school bus, we wear a mask. And just to understand, the more we repeat it, the more we say it to the children visually, I think it helps tremendously. I think for the children with special needs, it's very hard to understand a lot of what's happening, and then to ask them kids with sensory needs, to ask them to wear a mask now, that is exceptionally challenging. So if we can practice with the children, we can talk about it, we can show pictures, I think that's all very helpful for them.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much for your insight. So the next question is about communication. With it being so important, especially for speech development, do you have any suggestions for how parents can keep their children developing, help their children with their developing, giving social distancing and mask protocol rules? So you kind of just touched on that a little bit.
So my number one thing, I actually have it here with me, is I purchased tons of these clear masks. So when you wear it, you can see my lips fully. It's a full functional mask. I think as a therapist, the children need to see your mouth. A lot of them are, learning disabled or learning impaired, and they need to be able to see our face, our expressions, our mouth. So that's a number one key for me right now. Reading is amazing. You can take a walk outside and label, comment on things you're seeing. The best time I find for parents, because that's when parents are usually home, if there is either mealtime or even evening bath time, for children that are especially younger, talking about what body parts you want to, you're going to wash your face, and you can talk about the characteristics of your face. You can talk about the water, is it hot, is it cold, it's wet, now your body's dry. And there's so many different descriptive concepts, especially in the younger children, to use during bath time. Same thing with mealtime. We can talk about, do you want a big piece of food? Do you want a little piece of food? How does the food, is it sweet? Is it cold? Is it hot? And incorporating all those descriptive concepts. And even for the kids that are higher functioning, to talk about, this taste, is it salty? Is it sweet? You can build on that, and having children request what they want for their meal, and being active participants, even cooking in the meal, is a way to work on so many different concepts throughout the day. And I understand parents' working time is limited, but bath time, meal time, a simple walk outside is amazing to work on language skills.
Great, thank you so much. So our next question is actually about screen time. So we all know that children, especially babies, should ideally have very limited screen time or no screen time at all. However, we've become very reliant on our screens the past couple of months, and I have a feeling that's going to continue. So in terms of virtual communication, learning, and socialization, what do you think that means in this shift? What do you think that's going to affect people? And is there a way that we can incorporate screens in a proactive way? In a productive way?
I can take that first, I guess. There are plenty of learning apps. I mean, even simple Sesame Street. I mean, it's, or there's these, there's apps that work on letter recognition and sound recognition and number recognition, and they're interactive. The word is bat. It says but, drag the B to the picture. There's so many apps that we can use for children that are interactive. There's even apps that are music based, that have the songs for children, like Itsy Bitsy Spider, Wheels on the Bus, that the kids can be interactive while watching the screen, so they're not stagnant. They're being active participants. And as a mom, of course, my kids are on screens a lot right now. We're all doing the best we can. The best we can do is, we're going to put our kids on. I would say try to give it something that's somewhat educational, especially for the young children. There's plenty of things through PBS Kids that have a lot of educational apps, and they're actually free, and so are the programs.
Yeah. Something I can add to that is parents are going to have to shift, right? So if you allowed X amount of screen time for leisure, that's going to have to be reduced. We're going to have to now, screen time is for education, and leisure is going to have to be getting back down the floor, using manipulators, playing with train tracks, playing with cars, playing with dolls. They really need to get moving. And from a physical standpoint, when parents are concerned about the children staring at the screen, they make a lot of screen covers, right? So the students don't have to put on glasses. They could just put a screen over their computer that'll filter some of the light, so the students don't complain about their eyes hurting or headaches or anything like that. Something parents want to consider is the setup, right? You don't want the child hunched over all the time. You want them really you might want to have them stack it up on a couple of books and have them stand part of the day. I know Elisa was saying, have them engaged and active, because it's really important. You can't be sedentary and then go to bed at night, right? That's unhealthy on the other end.
One thing that I can add was that at the beginning, even now with the pandemic, I teach yoga, and I've been teaching to adults. I teach to children as well. And one thing with screen time, there's a lot of Zoom classes, yoga classes, and especially now because we're all, on the computers or leaning over like that, and how your shoulders feel, and the children feel it too in their lower spines, and they'll start, right, as we're all sitting, making our postures better. It grew a lot this summer, so anybody's entitled to come down to beach yoga, but also encourage your children. You can get your own yoga book and just do some down dogs and back bends and forward bends, and it's such a good thing to incorporate in your life right now. The calmness, the breathing in this time of craziness everywhere. With anytime you turn on anything, it's always something new. And that's kind of a good grounding in your lives. So children can Zoom. They know more about it than we do when they go and Google onto some of these sites that have the free classes now. So I always encourage my clients and my patients who I take care of to try. Even those that are in a wheelchair can try yoga. So
sure, chair yoga.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just want to add, from a parenting perspective, our kids are on screens more than ever. I have 2 teens, they're living on their screens. Be aware of what we're modeling to our children. If we're talking to our kids like this, that's what they're going to take away. And they're going to think, well, that's absolutely fine. We were having a family meeting the other day, and my daughter, 15, just kept picking up her phone. And I was like, we're literally having a meeting. We're literally talking about problem solving, and you're just staring at your phone. It's okay to put your phone away. So model that behavior. Listen, at the beginning of COVID, before COVID, we were all like, get off your phones. And now when COVID hit, it was like, get on your phone, go talk to your friends. We were encouraging this, but we still have to model that behavior, put some guidelines, put some limitations, go on for school, go outside, come back in on with your friends. Make sure they're not just stuck in their rooms all day with their phones. Communicate, let your kids know what the expectations are, what's allowed, what's not. Stick to that. What you say you're going to do, stick to. And don't be afraid to put your own phone down so you can have a true face-to-face with your children.
Thank you, guys. That was really great. So for our next one is going to be about actually going back to school in a remote setting instead. So for parents who have chosen to do a remote learning this year with their kids, what advice would you give to them?
So I'll start this one off. So I think the most important is to have a schedule. So I don't know what each district has decided, if they're having a 9 o'clock start or a 7 o'clock start. you want to try and keep your child on the same schedule as if they were going to school. They're going to wake up, wash their face, brush their teeth, get out of your pajamas, have breakfast if that was something you used to do. Keep a schedule. It becomes, and I've witnessed it, it's really easy, especially for the older children, to literally wake up, roll over, grab their computer, and stay in bed all throughout their sessions. And it's so important. It's physically important, it's mentally important, and they need to be stimulated, right? Just listening to the lecture or watching the visuals isn't enough. They need to be engaged. And now it's going to be the parent's job to help motivate them to be engaged. And part of that is get up, get out of bed. You know what? Maybe do, as Robin suggested, maybe do a yoga Zoom. You need to get moving and keep a schedule. Keeping a schedule is going to be ideal in this.
And also chat. The one thing with that, and I work, and I know it's going to be a challenge. It's going to be quite a challenge for parents and those of us, and you, I'm sure, that work all day and leave possibly before the kids are even, and then I'm gone. My youngest is going into 9th grade, and so I will not be home to be able to always, and we'll have a discussion, and she listens, and she's a solid student, but for some, it's going to be quite the challenge to not be home and to actually make sure that in some districts where they're going on this hybrid model of every other day or choosing to be remote, that they're supervised while they're doing that. So that I really, feel for a lot of people that are going to struggle with that.
I would also add, give your kids a space to work in. One of my clients got just like those trifold boards, and she's got 2 little kids, one in kindergarten, one in 3rd grade. Put a space where they can both work, put up these boards, decorated them with the kids so that they have like their schedule, and this is where your crayons are, and this is the little whiteboard we stuck to it. So the kids, when it comes to school, they grab it, they put it up, they're in their own little, classroom, they're in their own little space, less distractions all around. And now the kids know this is school time. When school time's over, we kind of close school and they can go do what they want. But giving the kids a space, like Carol was saying, giving them a routine and making it, this is school. This isn't roll out of bed. I have 2 teenagers. It was literally like wake up for school, and my son would be like, hand me my computer. Like he never got out from under the covers and would go to school like that, right? Get your body moving, start doing things, go through your routine, go through your schedule, find a space where you're going to work, make sure you have everything you need there, and then you could be productive in school.
Thank you, guys. So the next one is about tactics for explaining COVID and social distancing. What to say when kids want to go places or see friends, but the parents just aren't comfortable with that yet. And the standards that we're dealing with right now don't necessarily allow for it. How do you have that conversation?
For me as a mom, I'm very honest with my children. Our motto is that at our house is every family has different rules, and we do what's good for our family. And I know that's not easy when your kid, if you have a language impaired child. And once again, I'm going to throw in the social story. I think it's very important visually for the children that have a hard time with processing. Visually, it's so much easier for them. Making a story and just saying like, okay, Johnny, when we play with our friends, we're 6 feet away. Johnny, when we go, to a store, we wear a mask. Johnny, when we want to have a friend over for dinner, we eat outside and we sit across, from the table with one another. I think for me as a mom, honesty is the best way to go for the children. And listen, it's scary times for everyone, but if we can be positive about it, I think it's really important for the children. As we were talking about earlier, if we're anxious, our kids are going to be anxious. And I think if we can just be very positive and very honest, I think it will go a very long way.
I totally agree with you. Being really honest with our kids, letting them know what the expectations are for our family and how other families may be different. And at the beginning of this, we were constantly talking about social distancing just means physical distancing. It doesn't mean that you have to shut people out. It just means you can't be very close to them. 6 feet away at least, wear a mask, take care of yourself, and helping children understand that it's not just a fear of, like, as a parent, it's not just a fear that they're going to get sick, but who they might affect. So there's a social aspect, like a social consciousness aspect to it as well. Be a good person, keep everybody safe, not just yourself. You know, we don't want to go hugging grandma and grandpa because maybe their immune system may not be as strong as ours. So we're thinking about the world and our neighbors and our family and ourselves.
Yes. I'm going to continue that with social stories are amazing. They really are. And whether they're just pictures or 1 sentence per page or 2 sentences per page, they can be repetitive. It's not, you don't read it once. You could read it a few times. It's a reminder. We could read it every morning before we're going out. But especially with the younger children, I think it's good to give them a replacement. So when they ask to go play at a friend's house and let's say it's a rainy day so you can't be in the backyard, you give them a replacement. Well, we can't go to this friend's house because it's rainy, we're going to be inside. But what we can do is let's make cookies together on a Zoom or FaceTime. When you give them an alternative, they seem to be a little bit more at ease. It's not such that frustration of, I can't do anything, right? Because, I mean, we're in New York. It's about to get real boring come November, right? Like, it's going to get dark early. It's going to be cold. And the kids still need to be, their children. They want to, they have a lot of energy. They want to get up and go all day, every day. So, think about a lot of replacements. And what I found, we're talking to a lot of friends, a lot of the replacements are probably things that we all did as children, right? Baking bread, making cookies, learning how to sew, fixing something, taking something apart, putting it back together. Always have a little bit of a replacement, and for the older ones, it's a little bit different, it's like you give them privacy, why don't you go take, go spend some time in your room, go do a chat with your friends, have some alone time. I think for teenagers, that's a big problem that, here they are trying to develop a lot of independence, and now they're, in a home with their family and siblings all day, every day, and there's no privacy, which is so important to a teenager.
Thank you. Very true. So our next question is more about preparation and what happens if schools potentially close again, because that seems to be a real risk, especially if people aren't following the protocols the way they should be. How can parents prepare for this scenario practically and emotionally? And is it something that they should be preparing their kids for?
Yes. They should definitely be preparing their kids to work from home. Practically, what they should prepare for is, like Karen said, have that private space, have a space ready to go, have chargers, because you're going to get on Amazon, they're going to be all out of stock. We have, like in case of I lived through Sandy. I lived in Long Beach at the time, and I was so unprepared. So have your toolbox, make sure you have electronic charging devices. Maybe make sure you have a power strip that in case there's a brownout or something like that, it doesn't blow your device. I guess we don't really use batteries that much anymore, but those types of things. And, talk to the teachers, do I need to keep an extra iPad at home? What should I download? Are all the textbooks downloaded at this point? How can I make sure you have hard copies of passwords, right? That's really important. Everybody forgets their Google Classroom. That make sure you have hard copies of everything. And emotionally, I think it's really what we've been discussing. Like, let them know that this can happen. It's a possibility, and it's not going to be anything like last time because we're prepared this time. We're going to go one day, we're going to close school, and the next day we're going to open school back at the house. And again, it's how you present to them. If you're positive, and if you are, you're the parent, you're the adult. If you're the one assuring them that things are going to be okay, the children will be okay, right? We have to keep our fears, under wraps as much as they're real.
Great. So our last question is actually more of an open-ended question for all of you. If each of you could give one piece of advice to parents and caregivers at this time with all of the uncertainty and school starting back up in whatever form that looks like, what would that piece of advice be? Whenever you're ready, start.
So I'm going to say, like I was saying, keep a positive attitude and be prepared. Be physically prepared with supplies, have paper to print from, have ink for your computer, have additional chargers, have that workspace ready. And I'm not saying for 12 months, but have it ready that you could prepare up until the new year, right? Then supplies will be back in abundance, we hope. But be prepared and just constantly keep the conversation going, right? Always have that open dialogue. I think children, these are difficult conversations, right? And what makes conversations difficult are the topics. But if we keep having the conversation, it becomes less difficult, right? And it becomes more of the norm. And we want the children to not only talk about it, but to really listen and internalize what we're saying, that things will be okay. And at some point, they will be better, okay?
I think for me it would be consistency and scheduling. I think if the kids know what to expect every day, then you're more likely to have smooth sailing. Of course, there's always bumps in the road, but I think when there's consistency in a schedule, it definitely helps in the home.
Yes.
Great.
And for me, I think that working throughout in the healthcare environment and seeing how important a role your nutrition, your wellness, your level of how, well, your stress level and how you deal with that on a daily basis, how that affects your recovery of different illnesses that are coming up. It's very important to focus on the basics and stick to the simple advice of eating well, getting enough rest, drinking water, and getting physical activity every day. And these are things that we can control. And to have something to control in this time of things that we can't always control is a really positive thing for children also to know that they can eat well and they can take care of themselves. And they are in control of that at a young age. You can read about it. You can go to the store and talk about it. You can see all the different colors of fruits and vegetables and talk about it. So just to focus on the simple basics of healthful eating, and you can make any project about nutrition, art projects, math problems, science, social, everything. So anyway, everybody likes food, so talk about it.
True.
Yeah.
That was such a great lead-in, Robin, because I was going to talk about, my advice for parents during this crazy time is really kind of understand what you have control over and what you don't have control over. So we have control over how we in our own family and we in ourselves, deal with this COVID crisis. We can pay attention to the news, we can wear a mask, we can distance ourselves, but we don't have control over what other people are doing. We don't have control over what the schools are going to do. We don't have control over the rates. We have control over what we can do. And so I think my biggest advice, and this has been my word of the year, has been acceptance, right? Accept what you have control over, accept what you don't have control over, accept that things are going to get totally screwed up. In the middle of a test, the power's going to go out. You're not going to have enough Wi-Fi connection. You're going to forget your password. The computer's going to stop. Like, these things are going to happen, and that's okay, right? So just accept that these things are going to happen. We don't have to be perfect. We don't have to be perfect parents. They don't have to be perfect kids. Just knowing that, like, there's some things you can control, accepting that there are things you can't control, being as optimistic as possible, and doing the best you can with the tools you have. And we're all going to get through this. It's all going to work out okay in the end. We just have to give it some time.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope that our patrons enjoy your answers as much as I did. So thank you so much for all of your insight. I really appreciate it. And we're gonna
Thank you.
end there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.